It's like, oh, you have a podcast? I'm going to listen to it. He told me he tried to listen to two separate ones, and within 15 minutes had no fucking idea what we were talking about and had to turn it off.
Welcome to the 3% Podcast. This is Chad Post from Open Letter Books, and I'm here with Tom Roberge from Albertine Books and from New Directions. And this week, for our 101st episode, following our listener appreciation one, we've got a bunch of different items to talk about, like one kind of bigger idea, and then a bunch of news items and things that have been going on that I think we both want to comment on. And I think the best place to start is with the Women's World Cup of Literature and or the Women's World Cup as a whole, because I know you saw that game too.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, in a way. It was very unlike a lot of soccer games I've watched. You don't often see 4 goals in 16 minutes.
No.
From an underdog. I don't know what the line was. They were the underdog, weren't they?
I don't know. I don't think so, because they were ranked second in the world and Japan's 4th.
Oh, okay.
Even though Japan won the last World Cup.
Well, I think based on that, and just sort of on performance to that point.
Yeah.
I mean, the U.S. had been winning, but not totally convincingly the way Japan had been, and Japan had been just flawlessly executing and scoring at will. So
yeah, absolutely. And then they just got demolished.
That was amazing.
It was wild to watch. It was sort of I was sort of depressed about it because I wanted it to be close.
Yeah, that was strange. You know, after the third one, you just felt like, wow, this not Japan's day, and hard to see how they could possibly turn it around.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun no matter who wins for me personally. Like, I watched, like, Game 7 or whatever, not Game 7, but the last game of the College World Series, even though I know nothing about college baseball, just to watch them celebrate at the end. Like, watching people celebrate is great. And the U.S. women's national team got to play, like, the last half hour sort of knowing they were going to win, and there was that, like, giddiness on the field, on the sideline, and in the stands, even in the announcers to a certain extent.
Yeah,
and that's fun, just anticipating a celebration. So
it's 16 years they waited, which isn't an immensely long time in World Cup years, but still.
No, I have to admit, if you had asked me when the last one they won was, I would have said 8 years ago.
Oh,
I really
really?
kind of assumed they won every year.
Oh, yeah. They've been in the semifinal. They've never finished worse than third, but there's only been 7 Women's World Cups, too.
Right.
So, and they've won it 3 times, which is surprising.
So the last one they won was 99.
Yeah.
And that's one
with Mia Hamm and Brandon Chastain and that. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And that was
in college
here, I believe, too. I think it was in the U.S.
Was it?
I'm almost positive.
Okay.
I might be wrong. I'll double check that right now.
Well, 98.
It was held in the United States. Because I feel like they won in Pasadena. Yeah, they won in Pasadena.
They won in Pasadena.
Yeah. I do remember that right. I was just out of college, but I remember I was home visiting my parents and watched that.
Yeah, I would have been home 99. That would have been like right before I left for the Peace Corps. That there
you go.
Month or so that I had back in Connecticut. Doing nothing, waiting to go to the Peace Corps.
Watching women's soccer.
But
on the other side, we're recording this on Tuesday, and we have 2 semifinals. The 2 semifinals are set for the Women's World Cup of Literature, which one of them just took place, and that is the matchup between Canada, which is represented by Margaret, Atwood, and Oryx and Crake, against Australia, represented by Hannah Kent and Burial Rights. And Oryx and Crake just demolished Burial Rights. 6-0 was the final score on that one. So Atwood's in the finals, which is sort of to be expected, I suppose. I think so. And then the other one will be tomorrow, Wednesday, and it'll have taken place before this goes live. But it's Colombia with Laura Restrepo's Delirium against Germany and Alina Bronsky is the hottest dishes of Tartar cuisine. And I have no idea who's going to win that one.
They're both sort of underdogs in a weird way. I wouldn't have thought that German book would do so well against the field. And it has pretty convincingly won, you know?
It did get a little bit lucky in its draw, because she went up against The Happiness of Kati, the Thai book. That was like a young adult book at best. So that was, okay, so that's a given. And because of scoring so many goals and destroying that, got the bye because of that. And then went up the Ivory Coast Queen Poku book, which seems very good, but I think like after you beat that, automatically to the semifinals.
Yeah.
So the draw is a little bit favorable for Germany. Colombia's been strong, though.
Yeah, that book sounds really good. I didn't know anything about it until this. So
yeah, this one really could go either way. Who do you think's going to win it all?
I don't know. I mean, it seems hard to bet against Margaret Atwood. I don't think that's her best novel, but
it's of the ones that are available.
It qualifies, yeah,
right. It barely qualifies. I mean, it's because it's the first part of that trilogy.
Yeah.
If you did the whole trilogy, it would be like the Marias last year.
Right. Don't get me started on that.
Which would have been brutal. I think there's that new Atwood book coming out in the fall, too.
Is that true? I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it's got a star review in this issue of Publishers Weekly, and it was featured in that Millions thing that they do. The list of the books thing.
Oh, right.
I don't know what they call it. Preview. Great massive.
Anticipated?
Yeah. But the nice thing about Margaret Atwood is that she's actually following us on Twitter and keeps commenting on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I don't think anyone else has done that. Like any of the other authors. But she was like, after she won or made it to the semifinals, she's like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I made it this far." Something to that effect.
Interesting.
Yeah. So hopefully she'll keep on retweeting this to her friends. I'm gonna have one last this is sort of tangential but related to this, is that the Women's World Cup of Literature obviously isn't getting quite as much as the World Cup of Literature when we did it last summer, partially because last summer was such a big deal for it. There's 32 teams. It was a lot more people are involved, the whole thing. So this isn't quite getting as many like retweets and follows and that sort of deal. Those sort of metrics. Although I think there's a lot of people that are following it, especially anyone who's behind the like Read Women hashtag and movement. But did you see this stuff about the payment disparities between the Men's World Cup and the Women's World Cup?
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it was bad, but holy shit.
I mean, that's based on TV deals, I assume.
It's based on and FIFA, though, too.
Well, yes, but I do think that goes back to TV deals. And what do you think Fox Sports or Fox Sports 1 paid to broadcast?
Yeah, just in case anyone didn't see, the total payout for the Women's World Cup is $15 million, compared with the total for the Men's World Cup of $576 million. So a multiple of 40. And which also means that the World Cup payout, Women's World Cup payout, is less than the $35 million that FIFA spent on its own self-aggrandizing fiction film, United Passions. Which I mean, worth noting.
With these jokes have been made a million times about at this movie's expense, but do you know what the box office was for that total?
Wasn't it like $2,000 or something?
I don't. It wasn't even $1,000.
So ridiculous. So ridiculous.
Do you listen to Hang Up and Listen, the sports?
I have in the past, but I don't on any regular basis.
So Stefan Fatsis, who he's written about crossword puzzles, and he's a Scrabble player, but he wrote that book about I think it's called like A Few Seconds of Panic or something, where he went to training camp and kicked field goals for the Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, he's on there. He really hates Sepp Blatter, like really hates him. And he forced his two cohorts on the podcast to do a live commentary while they all sat wherever in the studio or something and watched that movie.
Wow.
And there's like a 10-minute clip. So Slate has this thing where you're supposed to pay to listen to their podcasts, whatever. I'm never going to do it. But they had like a 10-minute free sample of it. And so I listened to like the first 10 minutes. That movie sounds like the worst film ever made. Hands down.
I've seen glimpses of it, of like clips, and it looks spectacularly awful.
I can't believe they greenlit that. That seems crazy.
It's like, why not? We've got all this money. We might as well just...
Yes, that's true.
We're just embezzling the shit out of everything. Like, we might as well just, like, you know, create one big, like, huge piece of propaganda for us that no one will watch. Ever.
So one more thing about the Women's World Cup of Literature thing. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's suffering a little bit from just it's not as novel.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Last year we had the novelty of the whole thing. This time around it's, you know, second year in a row, it's just, you know, everybody loves the new shiny thing. And
right.
We had that last year. This year, not so much. So.
Yeah, that is very true. I mean, it was like, yeah, and it is good though. I think it's really fun, and I think it's a lot of good books that are in here. And you know, this is like a little cat out of the bag, but not that much. We're working. One of my interns is working with me this summer, where we're coding the database, the translation database, with male and female or both when there's like anthologies for the authors and translators of every book that we've ever logged in there, of fiction and poetry. And I think, unless things go awry, by September we'll have a full report on, like a real true, like 20-page white paper on what the statistics are from all the different countries, publishers, years, time period, on what the breakdown is between books by men and books by women that are published in translation. So in a way, this is kind of like a perfect kind of prelude to that, or like sort of builds up some of the things. Like some of these countries were almost impossible to find books that were eligible for, like Thailand and Costa Rica and Ecuador. Right. So it'll be interesting to have that data available at the end of this fall.
Weird. I mean, were you present, or was it?
Yeah.
No, you were there. During Penn, there was that Women in Translation panel that was held at Albertine with Susan was there and Margaret Carson. I can't remember who else. But they talked about the Vita statistics, but they did also reference your database.
Right.
And this seems like a marriage of those two things.
Yeah. They took like 2014 and did it. So we've gone back and done it for all the years. So my thought was like, because they also broke it down by publisher a lot, and I wanted to look at it by, like, does it shift by country? Like, which languages tend to have a better equivalency than others? Like, I have this gut feeling, I keep using this, and this is not a reflection, this has no prior knowledge, but I have the sense that, like, it'll be like, oh, in Russia, there's been, like, one female author translated over the past, like, 4 years, whereas, like, books from Spanish, it's, like, vacillated a lot, and, like, been more... Like, there's probably a closer, a smaller gap.
Scandinavian countries, too, I would think.
Absolutely.
Probably pretty small. And France.
Yep. But it'll be cool to look at it over time.
Yeah, I agree. Especially, like, little micro trends, like the Scandinavian crime thing.
Yeah, exactly. So we shall see.
Korean literature and Japanese literature and that sort of thing.
Right, yeah, that's true. But...
what else?
The other big news of today is the reconfiguration / evolution of the Man Booker International Prize. So it was announced today that the Man Booker International Prize and the Independent Foreign Fiction Prize are merging to create one annual award for a work of literary fiction translated in English. So in the past, the Man Booker International Prize took place every other year, and it honored an author for their entire body of work. So it wasn't specific to a book, but like last year, Krasznahorkai won. And it's for Krasznahorkai's career, right? And the Independent Foreign Fiction Prize, which is run by the Independent newspaper, and Boyd Tonkin, who founded it, was for the best. It's similar to the Best Translated Book Award, the best book from the past year, although they only look at fiction, not poetry. So now they're combining them into one prize called the Man Booker International Prize, and it'll be every year, but it'll only be for a book, not for the body of work anymore. But the award money is now going to be £50,000. Or no, yeah, £50,000. I believe.
What was the value of the two separate awards?
It was £10,000 and so it's £50,000 before for Man Booker and $10,000 for Independent Foreign Fiction Prize. Now it's £62,000. That will be split between the translator and the author.
And this will be every year.
Yes. Which I have mixed opinions about. Like,
yeah,
the money part's fine. That's great. Like, the more money, the better. That I have no problem with. But the fact that it went from like you eliminated an award, and they're like their rhetoric around it is like, everyone in favor of world literature should be rejoicing today because we've evolved the Man Booker Prize to like eliminate an award and make it something different. And it's kind of like, I mean, it's sort of unfortunate because like people will, with an individual book, like you can just get fucked over. Like the Shishkin book, Maidenhair, could have won the Best Translated Book Award any number of years, but it was up against Satantango in the particular year that came out.
right.
Whereas he could be then honored as like for his body of work, he deserves a Man Booker International Prize. And now we've eliminated that. So it's only based on like the immediacy and the last year sort of thing. I mean, the Neustadt Prize here in the States is for a body of work, but it's a little bit different.
I mean, I am with you that I dislike the fact that we got rid of an award, and I dislike that we got rid of the one that's more lifetime achievement, if only because the only lifetime achievement award out there is the Nobel, and those are for such, I don't want to say old, but, advanced in their careers authors that you just, it'd be nice to have something that recognizes an international writer mid-career,
Right.
or, not quite in the twilight of their career, like what the Man International was doing. And it's frustrating to lose an award. And I dislike the focus always on this year, this one calendar year, or whatever the eligibility period is. It allows things to get, like you said, what if two things are published in the same year? They don't get a chance the next year. They don't get a chance in the lifetime sort of award realm. So they're just kind of screwed. And it's not really, this is not horseshoes and hand grenades. You don't get anything for coming in second. You're on the long list or short list or whatever, but come on. Who really cares about that,
I think one of the arguments I saw online was that the Man Booker is better at selling books and promoting itself, and that this will benefit things overall, which I believe true. And this also, this is total 100% speculation. I don't know that. I have no knowledge of this, but I wouldn't be surprised. So Boyd Tonkin is chairing the judges for this year's award, the 2016 Man Booker International. I wouldn't be surprised if he's retiring or stepping down from being involved in these things in the next 3-4 years, and that this is a long-term home for that prize that he started.
I mean, maybe. Who knows? You're speculating a little bit, but
I'm speculating completely.
But it's not unfathomable that might happen.
Yeah, I mean, he's been the chair of the committee of the International Foreign Fiction Prize every year since it started in 2001. So at some point, I can imagine just being like, "I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm done."
Yeah,
and I don't know who's going to take it over from my newspaper.
Right. These things are tiring. Like doing this every year.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would know.
Yeah. That's crazy because they just started theirs in 2001. We started in like 2009. That's not that many years different in the end. I mean, it's 8 years, but
yeah,
it's still like within the past. It's within this millennium that these awards came into existence.
It's been a slow build on the translation front.
Sure has. Yeah, those are the two of the things. And the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was that way back when, I think it would have been our first podcast of this calendar year.
I think that's right.
We talked about how Mark Zuckerberg had announced that he would be challenging himself to read a new book every other week for the whole entire year. And they would be inviting Facebook users to join in and to have like a conversation about these books and all be announced and all that kind of stuff. And so the first one they announced was The End of Power, which seemed to generate a lot of attention. And there was some we talked about, like, is this going to sell books? What is going to happen with this over time? Maybe it's very powerful. Like, he's a huge, influential guy, for better or for worse, that a lot of people are, quote-unquote, friends with and will, quote-unquote, like his posts. Anyways, the new Publishers Weekly has data about this. So they have 2 bits of data here. They took the books that he's included and charted out how many likes there were for each one of those posts announcing the book. The first one, The End of Power, was 7,149. Then it went down to 2,288 for the Better Angels of Our Nature, then down to 1,279 for Gang Leader for a Day, then down to 1,100 for On Immunity, and is now down to 398 for Sapiens. So it's been like a pretty brutal decline in likes for this. And then they have book sales for the week after it was announced and the second week after it was announced, compared to the week before it was announced. So the first book, The End of Power, sales the week before announced, 29. Week after, 3,089. Second week, 1,298. I assume these are all Nielsen book scan. Yeah, right. Book scan numbers. Then, if you go down to like some of these more recent ones, even On Immunity was 285 the week before, 300 the week after, and 303 the week after that. So like next to no negligible influence. And like there's a bunch of them down here. My favorite one is this. Rational Ritual. 2 the week before he announced it to be part of his club. 9 the week after that. And 26 the week after that.
How did he go from... I mean, that's remarkable to have such an incredible drop in influence.
It's wild. I mean, it's really kind of wild. I mean, the last one, Sapiens, was 657 week before, and then 1,254 the week after, which seems to be like that he had some impact. I don't know what book that is, to be honest. I have no idea what that is.
What's it called?
Sapiens?
Like Homo sapiens?
Yeah, exactly.
A Brief History of Humankind?
Sure. That's the first thing that came up for me, too.
Yuval Noah Harari?
Sounds about right to me. It's the #1 bestseller in biology and life sciences.
It is new.
I bet you that's why it's from February.
Yeah, that matters. I mean, Gang Leader for a Day is like 6 years old, so
yeah,
that has an impact. But still, I mean, 6 years old, but it was still, I mean, how many copies do you think it sold? 200,000? There are how many people in this country? Like,
yeah,
should have had an impact.
Yep. It's kind of wild. I mean,
That's
it is
remarkable, yeah.
So, part of our speculation was that it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal, I think. I don't remember exactly what we said, but yeah, sure enough. It's nice, but I don't know that it's like changing the reading world. It's no Oprah.
It's no Oprah. Do you think this has anything to do with just the way Facebook has sort of evolved over the last couple of years?
I wouldn't be surprised if it has something to do, too, with the fact that it's almost impossible to see. I mean, unless it's pushing it to people. Like, I've never noticed him picking any of these books after it was first announced. Like, I've never noticed it. Like, not that I follow him or anything. I just feel like it would just come up or be referenced somewhere. But I never see that. I knew On Immunity was. I knew that one. Mostly because I hate that book. Like, I just can't stand that book. And when I saw it, I was just like, oh, Jesus Christ. But other than that, like, none of these was I aware of. And I think that Facebook it sucks in the way that it spreads information in a lot of ways. And I know people love it. I know why sort of people can love it. But, like, it's not that effective for, like, sustaining something long-term to, like, get out information.
Well, no, and they've tweaked it themselves. Facebook has tweaked it in such a way as to do that. You know, yeah. I'm not saying they shot themselves in the foot here because his book club was clearly just something he wanted to do and was sort of outside of the business model. But it might be that the way Facebook now sort of operates on a user level, by which I mean an individual and not a corporation or even a nonprofit or something like that, sort of makes it impossible for this sort of thing to gather steam unless it's well over, we're talking 10,000, 20,000 likes so that you're reaching somebody from every, friend group or something like that,
Right.
And at the same time, Twitter has gotten bigger, of course, and just endlessly bigger. Instagram has gotten bigger. Goodreads has gotten bigger. Like all of these things where there are just more places for people to talk about books.
One of the things I think is advantageous about Twitter in regards to this is that it's easier to share things. Like you don't have to write things. Like a lot of the Facebook, you're supposed to like write something on top of it. Like whereas you can't just like retweet things. So like if he announced this to 10,000 Twitter followers and a quarter of them retweeted it to their X thousand of followers, suddenly like you're spreading very quickly, right? and that should happen within Facebook too, but I just feel like the sharing option on Facebook is not as intuitive and not as like geared towards that sort of amplification, the way that like Twitter is basically like amplification constantly.
Yeah, and yeah, it's just not as easy. I mean, a like on Facebook is not the same as a retweet on Twitter. You know, It doesn't have that impact. So, yeah, I mean, they're just different things, and they each have their value, I suppose. But I'm just not sure that, starting a book club on Facebook was ultimately the best idea.
No, he should have started on Oprah.
I mean, or maybe it's just a matter of the books he chose. What if he chose novels,
Yeah, I mean, here's the list that they have here is The End of Power, The Better Angels of Our Nature, Gang Leader for a Day, On Immunity, Creativity Inc., The Structure of Scientific Revolution, Rational Ritual, Dealing with China, Orwell's Revenge, The New Jim Crow, The Mukaddima, I'm mispronouncing that, and Sapiens.
They're, very much of a type.
Yeah. Maybe it would have been more popular if you would have chosen something.
Or
whatever.
Even, I'm not saying novels, but even, a memoir that wasn't business-related or tech-related or about China.
This seems very much like a male dude in Silicon Valley choosing books. Which it obviously is.
Like MBA program, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Poor people. Anyways, I think the last thing that we were going to talk about was sort of the idea that I texted you about and let me see if I can explain this and see if you have good answers to this. So I was thinking on things the other day of like how sometimes there are books or authors that are getting either talked about by a lot of people or talked about and promoted very specifically by people who then because of that, I just have a bad taste in my head and don't really necessarily want to read their books and sort of avoid them, even though I probably would like them just based on like, not necessarily even like the hoopla surrounding them, but just the specific individual recommenders of those books. So he used to have this issue with BuzzFeed and FlavorWire of like things that they would recommend and just be like, fuck that, I'm not reading that then. Just no. And then there's at the same time like the reverse of it, like Sebald, where I feel like I should like Sebald more than I do because people I really like really love him, but I just don't necessarily. I like him, but I'm not, head over heels like this is the greatest thing ever written the way that some of these other people are. And I feel like I'm somehow like that I should like that better. But I was interested to hear if you had any ideas or reactions to that of like books that you either paid attention to or didn't pay attention to based on the way that people's recommendations or the people who were recommending them or what the situation was.
I should preface all of this by saying I tend not to read like the big new novel because I am just sort of dislike hype in general, and tend not to buy into it and sort of avoid things like I'm never going to read something just because everyone's reading it, basically. Like, when the corrections came out and no one really knew who this guy was, but everyone was reading it and that sort of thing. Like, I was like, yeah, I'm going to wait a couple of years, see what everyone thinks about it then. Or like Kavalier and Clay and, all those sorts of books that were just everywhere 10 years ago, like when I first started getting into publishing, like that sort of thing. I've always avoided that. There's a reason I never read Dave Eggers till much, much later, like that sort of thing. It's like, I can't think of like specific examples, but I definitely know if like the kind of people I met who recommended Dave Eggers also told me like they hadn't read any other book that year.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're like, no, but Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius, it's amazing, you got to read it. And I was like, well, what do you usually like? They're like, oh, it's the only book I've read besides like my law school books. I'm just like, yeah, see, there's your problem.
I haven't read a book since high school. This thing is like, fantastic.
The Harry Potter thing, it's like, I'm never going to get into that. There's just...
Is there any book that you can think of that you've read that was one of those books? Where people at the time, because I imagine that part of the appeal of that to a lot of readers is that for once, or maybe not for once for them, but for once they're reading something that other people are also reading. Because most of the time they're reading shit that no one else is reading, or like a handful of people who you're never going to encounter, or like you will on like Twitter or like at a trade show. But like it's not like you can go to your, like, it's not like 50 Shades of Grey. Like, I assume, like, half of the people in Rochester have read 50 Shades of Grey. And when it came out, if I had been reading it, I could have had a conversation with a bunch of people. But otherwise, I could say, like, oh, I read this book, and they'd be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I've never heard of Roberto Bola&ntilde.
Right. I mean, the only books that I can think of that fit in this category are Every Time a New Houellebecq is published.
I got the galley of that today.
Did you? It's already out?
Yep.
I mean, I read him as soon as I can. And, I mean, he's not incredibly well read in translation. But, I mean, I read the last one in French. And, yeah, I mean, I was reading the book that everyone else was reading.
Yeah.
And I've read the Mersault investigation, when it came out in French and, sort of to feel.
That's a book that I definitely don't want to read.
I think it's interesting. I don't think it's amazing. I think it's worth reading. It'll take you a day. It's pretty simple.
I know. That's a day I could read something else. I just feel like I don't know. There's something. This is one of those. This is sort of an example for me of like, because of like the thing around it, the tension surrounding it, and like what it is and all that, and like how everyone's like falling all over themselves to like to praise this book. I'm just not interested. I'm less interested because Michiko Kakutani likes it than I would have been if no one had talked about it.
I totally agree. The way they talk about it. I guess what I'm saying, I'm more inclined to disagree with the way something is talked about than I am who is actually doing the saying.
Yeah, that's talking.
True. That said, because I know he dislikes David Foster Wallace, I pretty much disagree with everything James Wood says off the bat. Like, because I think he's narrow-minded and doesn't like David Foster Wallace. Like, that's it. That's my one, that's what I'm basing all of my appreciation of all of his future criticism on. And I think that's fair. He does not like a major, writer of the last century, and that's bizarre to me. So I don't read his reviews. I mean, I just don't care. I don't care what he has to say.
Fair enough.
He's the only one I could think of. But I'm thinking, like, what you're trying to ask is about, like, blurbers?
Somewhat, yeah. Or even friends that you have, readers that you know. People that aren't necessarily critics, but other people I can see, like, being, like nowadays, so I used to hate Flavor Wire immensely. And nowadays, like, Jonathan Sturgeon doing his book stuff, I actually like him. And a lot of his suggestions I actually do appreciate. Like, depending on if I have a rant or a rave, I have multiple things lined up in my mind. And one of them would be a rant for a book that he recommended that I otherwise would never have ever paid attention to. That's not exactly what I'm talking about, but, like, my prejudice before was against that. Like, if it had been from the former books editor there, I'd just be like, absolutely not. Will not touch. Because I don't like your persona and your way of talking about books and your recommendations.
I totally have people that I know and that you know that this applies to, and I'm not going to name any of them.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure we are probably that person for other people.
Oh, I'm absolutely sure.
Positive of that. Can I say, I was just sort of glancing at my shelves, which, by the way, are depleted these days. I've decided to start getting rid of books and give them to people who appreciate them.
Yeah.
But I looked over and I saw all my Hunter S. Thompson books and recalled that he hated Tom Wolfe. And that definitely soured my impression of Tom Wolfe. Definitely.
Yeah.
So there is that. I mean, not because I think Hunter S. Thompson was the greatest journalist of all time, but I definitely love some of his books. His early gonzo journalism stuff, Hell's Angels, is, a masterpiece. And so when he stands in opposition to the so-called new media version of new journalism, whatever it's called,
right,
of Tom Wolfe, I'm going to side with Hunter S. Thompson on that one. And,
yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to mention is, like, you don't do maybe you do this every once in a while. You don't put introductions into your editions, do you?
We don't very often.
You do I feel like I just saw one recently, that's why. But generally you don't.
Did we for something recently? It's possible. Usually we don't because of the timing, but also because they're new books. Like, it's weird to me.
But I remember when New Directions redid Céline with an introduction from none other than William T. Vollmann.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, this is just perfect. Like, I already liked Céline, but then Vollmann, who I love, on top of that, it was just, perfect. Yeah. And the other example of that is Jonathan Lethem, who I don't particularly love all of his writing, but I do think his Stranger, coincidentally enough, more sci-fi stuff is really interesting. Yeah. And as a person, he's just fantastic. He's the nicest guy. He's really smart. Yep. Easygoing. His love for Philip K. Dick. Oh, yeah. He loved Philip K. Dick even more. Not that was really possible or necessary, but yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. We would like to have him more in the more of the reprints. That's why I feel like it makes the most sense too.
Yeah, this is a long-standing debate, I think, in publishing sort of canon-type literature, whether or not it does anything. I don't know. I feel like it's academic apparatus, as they call it, and not sure it does much for trade sales, though every once in a while somebody will say, oh, I bought this because that. I just feel like the amount of time and energy spent on creating them doesn't necessarily have the impact that publishers think it's going to on the trade side of things.
Right. I always like it if you can get that introduction placed somewhere. So if it's going to appear in your book and it's also in Harper's or The Nation or somewhere like that, that makes it more logical to me.
Yes. I mean, that's harder and harder to do.
Yeah, it's very,
very hard to do. It can be useful for events, for things like that. If you can get that personality to, come and be an expert and talk about a dead author or a foreign author or something. But yeah, placing those things is very, very tricky. Yeah. Very tricky. Because that was like the mindset at New Directions every time. And they're like, we're going to try to place this. And I was like, I can't place all these things. It's just not going to happen, Right. So, they're there. I mean, sometimes they add something, sometimes they don't. I think Lethem also wrote one for New Directions about Nat West.
Oh, that makes sense.
I can't remember if it was for Miss Lonely Hearts or Day of the Locust. But yeah, it made perfect sense.
Aren't they in the same book now?
They used to be in... They still are, but there are also separate editions that are slightly cheaper.
He did do the intro to the one with both of them.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, he is a very, conversational sort of writer for that type of thing. Sometimes they can be very academic, these introductions, whatever. We're way off topic here.
Yeah, sort of, but that's okay.
But yeah, sometimes you get that sweet spot with a recommender or whatever. Blurbs don't really do much for me. Every once in a while you'll see something that helps, but...
I pay next to no attention to blurbs.
I pretty much don't pay attention to them. Partly just from knowing how the sausage is made.
That's one of those things that's really hard to distinguish though between being in publishing and being a normal reader. Someone else, that might mean a lot to them, and to me it's just could not care less about the blurbs. But I think normal readers, sometimes that does mean more to them than it does to me, significantly. But I would be interested too if anyone writes into our Gmail account if there are any other examples people have of books that they wanted to, or that they avoid. I could say the Nosgard books right now I'm sort of avoiding because of all the things about them. But that's still a little different. But I was wondering if anyone listening had books that they avoided because of various recommendations, or books that that had been recommended but they just haven't been able to get into but feel like it's their fault, not the books. Also, you had some Nosgard news. Theoretically,
this is more of a rumor, an unsubstantiated rumor.
Gossip,
if you will. That Nosgard, through his agent, the inestimable Andrew Wiley, signed a contract for $1.2 million from the Penguin Press for a new novel that he has not written yet. And this advance was given based on a one-page summary of said novel that has not been written yet.
It's intense.
$1.2 million, book that has not been written. So realistically, let's talk through this.
How many rights are they going to get?
Okay, when I was at Penguin 5 years ago, they were already demanding world English pretty much for everything that originated in the U.S. Unless I seriously doubt that there's a UK deal for this as well, especially since it's Penguin and whatever. So they're going to demand world English for sure. Which, whatever, that's basically the UK is what it comes down to. Yeah, it might be a 12-year thing. They're gonna,
but they definitely won't have foreign rights, so they're not going to make their money back by selling.
Well, no, it's going to be written in.
Yeah, I know. So that part's cut out for sure.
Yeah,
just for listeners' benefits.
Yeah,
because this is one of the things that you can do, like with Garth Hallberg's book or whatever. To make this a specific example, they paid $1 million for that, but they will have the ability to sell rights to Spain, Italy, wherever else, in theory.
Right, as opposed to the agent retaining those rights and selling them off piecemeal. The agent's done for all intents and purposes on that deal. So
to recoup your $1.2 million in this case, it's basically all sales.
It's basically all sales. I mean, there's, co-publishing sort of agreements that can be done with Penguin in the UK, Penguin in Canada, Penguin in India, and wherever else. But yeah, that's a lot of. Those deals aren't going to be getting back their money. They're going to be sort of minor. Maybe they get $100,000 from the UK, and everything else will be minor. 1.2 million is a lot of sales.
I was just guessing, if they priced it $30, got 50% of that back, and sold 100,000 copies, they'd make their money back.
Yeah, you don't. Well, the other thing I should point out is you don't necessarily need to sell 1.2 million worth to justify the advance.
Yeah,
I mean Penguin will start profiting before his advance is paid out and he starts earning royalties. There's a space in between where Penguin profits before he does.
Oh yeah.
So that said, so he hasn't written the book yet. God knows if he's even working on it. So
there's a reference in an interview to a book that he's thinking about writing.
So it could be, let's say, 2-3 years before he finishes this book?
Yeah.
Year to get it translated?
Yeah.
Year to get it through the pipeline? 5 years from now, maybe they publish it, right?
Yeah.
Realistically. Do you know when Archipelago is slated to finish?
Their fourth one is now. The fifth one, I think. Okay, this is again getting a speculation, but say the fifth one, they've been following a year-long pattern. The fifth one would come out next year, which is 2016, but the sixth volume is twice the size of any of the previous ones, I believe. So maybe they'll skip a year, so it'd be like 16 and then 18. So maybe like 2 years before this Penguin book would come out.
Yeah, maybe Penguin does what they can to get it out in 2019, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of hype right now, and it's been sustained for, maybe a year or so, like really high-level amount of hype surrounding him and these books. Do you think it can be maintained that long?
No. I don't.
Do you think Volume 7 will sell as high as...
Volume 6?
Volume 4, even?
I don't know, because I wonder if people just buy things... my gut feeling would be no, but then I could also, go against that and say, people are just going to keep... Once they got some, they just buy all of them with the thought that one day they will read it. It makes them smarter to own it. It's better if it's on their bookshelf than not. Something like that. But no, probably. I mean, unless he wins, the Nobel Prize.
Well, that's not going to happen anytime soon.
No, I wouldn't think so either.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's a chance his hype could go way down. I've heard that book 6 is the best.
Yeah.
So maybe the hype will blow back up. Maybe it'll go into a fallow period and come back with 6 and 7. I don't know. We'll see. But that's a big gamble, 1.2 million.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Big gamble.
Wish I could write a one-page synopsis and get $1.2 million for it. I wish I could write a one-page synopsis and get $5,000 for it. Fuck. Yeah, so anyways, I guess are we to our rants and raves time?
Well, can I talk about one podcast-related thing?
Yeah.
So, we had episode 100 last time around and got some congratulations from people on Twitter, and it's all, wonderful, and we're very grateful to have been able to sustain this all this time and know that we actually have listeners. I don't know how many we have. Nate, our producer, checks these things. He tells me it's somewhere around 500 generally.
I think that's right, yeah.
So I very masochistically decided to look on Twitter, or not on Twitter, on the iTunes/podcast app on my phone. And, there's categories, arts, literature, whatever like that. And it ranks the top 300, basically, books podcasts.
Oh, God.
We are not in there.
Oh, my God. Are you serious?
So
300?
Top 300. I will say that I do know from another friend who does podcasts that those rankings fluctuate wildly from week to week, episode to episode, and they're based on new subscribers.
Oh.
So you and I sort of have no impact on that because we've probably been subscribers since the beginning and whatever. So we need new subscribers constantly in order for our ranking to go up at all. We can't just steadily have 500.
Is there a books? I'm looking at it online, iTunes chart, which maybe is slightly different, but they don't have a books category in here. They have arts, which is
There's no subcategory?
This doesn't list that. This just lists arts, which has fresh air is number 1.
Oh, of course.
And and looking at that, I'd be like, oh, well, yeah, of course. But now the 300, Book Riot's All the Books is on here, number 26 on this one.
Yeah, they're doing pretty well.
They're even ahead of Garrison Keillor. God, we're shitty. We need new listeners. Grantland's food news is ahead of us.
Well, this is what I'm getting to. So our loyal listeners need to share the news a little bit more. Tell their friends to listen, that sort of thing. We can, hopefully get some new subscribers just from Twitter/Facebook/ word of mouth at a bar when you're drunk. Word of mouth. Get some new subscribers.
Yes, please, everyone.
Don't even have to listen. Now I understand why on the podcast I listen to, they won't make these jokes that are, I downloaded but didn't listen. That's why. That's why.
That's totally okay.
So if you subscribe and have the automatic download but never listen, that's okay. It's okay. We just want to get on the list so that people might discover us.
Yeah, I just went to the iTunes preview podcast arts literature, and it's got a shitload of them here. I don't know how many, a ton, right? Easily a million. No, probably those 300 that you're talking about. And we're not on here at all. We're in the alphabetical section. I hope. Maybe we're not even there. No, we're not there either. What are we under on this thing?
Don't ask me.
I'm going to have to do some research here. But new listeners, tell your friends. That'd be funny if we're under something really weird. Remember they did delete the podcast randomly one day a few weeks ago.
Right.
And then put it...
Or who knows, some accounting category or something. 3%,
Oh, I need to open up too many things to figure this out. Yeah, I don't know how to do that right now. But yes, please tell your friends. Just download. Don't care.
Don't care.
Don't care at all.
Yes, we would love it if they listened.
Yeah, but to be honest, I just want to be on the list.
Yeah. Which reminds me, when I was in Geneva visiting my friend a few weeks ago, he's not really a book person, to be frank. But he told me he'd only recently discovered that I had a podcast. Because once again, he's not really a book person, nor does he live in the States. So whatever. But it's like, oh, you have a podcast? I'm going to listen to it. He told me he tried to listen to 2 separate ones, and within 15 minutes had no fucking idea what we were talking about and had to turn it off. That's fine. I'm okay with that,
That's about right.
I should mention, due to several emails that we've had over the last few months about our complete inability to properly identify books, titles, authors in the course of conversation, like we just did.
Well, I wrote down all of them.
All right.
I'm pretty sure I've got all of them.
All right. Well, good. Because I'm trying to, but I certainly lapsed when we started talking about, the blurb effect or whatever. So who knows? Anyway, I'll just send this off to you. Anyway, to address that, publicly here, we are working on it. And I didn't see if this is in the 100th post, but do we just include a link somewhere to good?
I think I just listed them because I didn't have the time to go find every single book online.
That's fair.
So I just listed them, and you could search them on your own. I'm sure people are capable of doing that.
Okay. That works. So do you want to rant or do you want to rave?
I don't care. I've got both.
Rant.
I'm ready to go with everything. You want me to rant?
I want you to rant.
Because I have a really good... Okay, Can I do two?
Sure.
Okay. The first one, the one that I want to rant about specifically, is I tried listening to Neil Stephenson's new book, Seven Eves, and Neil Stephenson is garbage. I've decided that he is the most overrated writer of our generation. I am done with him. I've never really liked his books. He's like this huge science fiction person that every time he has a new book out, everyone gets so excited about it, and he's groundbreaking and genius and whatever. And this book is so incredibly bad and boring. I deleted it off my Audible app. I'm never touching it again. It's like one of these like big long space sagas of like if the world was destroyed, how would we be able to like survive and go into the future? And there's so many problems with it. One being like his constant like love for like Silicon Valley libertarianism, which is aggressively annoying to me. But then secondly, like because of like all the nerdiness of science fiction, like every single thing that he references requires like a 45-page like explanation of how this robot would work in this space area so that no one could question whether or not this is accurate or not. And it makes for the most tedious and awful writing that I've ever listened to in audiobook form. And I'm done with him. I hate him. I hate his books. I'm just over it. And I needed to let that out. I spent fucking 18 hours listening to this thing, too.
It's funny, when I think, like, when I was, like, heavily reading Philip K. Dick, to mention him one more time, I had a lot of friends who told me that I would like him. And I never got around to reading him because I would pick up the books and then I would look at the back and be like, oh, yeah, it seems a little, like, politically charged, but with an agenda that I just didn't care about.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
That's pretty accurate. And some of them, I've read like 3 of them now, and so there's other ones, but like I'm done. Done. I'm not going back to it. I'm over him. And I know a lot of people love him. It's like book debuts on the bestseller list every time. Yep. No interest. I think they're super overrated. I think you could do a lot better reading every single Philip K. Dick book ever. Yeah. Than reading any one of his books. So no, absolutely not. But my rave is a funny rave. This is did you see this thing about Micronesia?
The soccer game?
Yeah, the soccer thing. In case anyone didn't see this, Micronesia lost. They have a team now, a national team for the first time ever, and they played in like they had to play 3 games to try and qualify for whatever the tournament was, like the Pacific Cup. Yeah. And they lost by scores of, where is the 3 of them? 31-0, 46-0, 38-0. So they gave up 114 goals in 3 games and scored 0, which is amazing. Like I watched some of the highlights of this on ESPN's website, and it's unbelievably awesome to see and sort of depressing. Although, given that I played on an indoor soccer team that would lose like on a regular basis, like 16-1, I feel like it was like coming home in a way watching them, and I was amazed by how small their players are. Like I feel like I would be a normal-sized player on Micronesia's team.
Yeah, I saw the clip on ESPN or something when they lost 46-0, and yeah, they're a bunch of tiny men. One player for the opponent, I'm blanking, Vanuatu.
Yeah.
Scored 16 goals himself.
Yep. Yeah. 16. Like I don't even know if that's even fun at that point.
Like what happens? Like, I mean, if you had the benefit of playing this team like you're a shoo-in for the golden boot. No pun intended.
Yeah, that's true. You're like automatically going to win.
It's like, 16-4. You know, of course, yeah.
In one of those games, there were 7 people with hat tricks.
Hey, at least they're trying. At least they're trying.
There was one other really entertaining soccer thing, though, is there's a video that they did in Russia where they gave everyone these virtual reality glasses in which it would show the field from like the top as if you were playing a video game. So you wouldn't see you'd see you from like a top perspective, like a bird's eye perspective, right? And this video, I'll post it. It is so funny because no one can acclimate to that at all. So they're just like throwing the ball into the middle of nowhere. The goalie is constantly just diving on the ground, like way out middle of the field. It's remarkably funny because it's so disorienting to imagine trying to play with like your perspective of where your head looks isn't changing.
That's weird. Yeah.
It's super weird. I'll post it. I'll send it to you, and you're gonna be like, "What the fuck, man?" I don't even know how you would be able to do it, but anyways, okay, you get a rant or rave or both.
I wanted to rave about Mr. Kevin Elliott.
Oh yeah,
one of our judges this year for the Best Translated Book Awards and bookseller at 57th Street Books in Chicago. He sent me the other day a photo of 3 titles with bookmarks in them that he had printed up that say, be a part of the 3%, and then it says, the book you are holding was translated from the French. And then there's another one that says, the book you're holding is translated from the Afrikaans, et cetera, et cetera. And the 3% is much larger font size than the others. They're not the flashiest thing in the world, but they do, they make for an interesting sort of eye-catching thing in a bookstore that you would, if you see them sort of around the store, you might be curious about what they are, that sort of thing. Just one more way of sort of drawing attention in a positive way to translation and not having it be sort of, my boss at New Directions, Barbara, always says this, like, we don't want it to be like, eat your vegetables. We want you to just be like positively, contributing, being proud of reading something, that maybe not everyone does, but you can be a part of it and that sort of thing. I will say one of the other booksellers on the panel, I forget who it was. Oh, Mark. Oh, no, Kate, who works at
192.
192 Books, said, be prepared for the inevitable questions about if you get 3% off the books when you buy them. So
they should do that. That should be the promo. 3% off. That would be like next to nothing, like 32 cents. Right?
Yeah, it's pretty negligible. And I have one more rave, which has nothing to do with anything book related, but please indulge me here. After years in the shadows, not really getting a chance to shine, but getting the spotlight, stealing the spotlight at the same time, the Minions finally have their own movie coming out. I'm sure you're going to bring your kids to see it.
I don't know. That one might be the one for their mom.
I love the Minions. I can't
really.
Yeah, I don't know why. The two from Despicable Me, in case anyone has totally lost track of what I'm talking about here. The little yellow guys, which, by the way, here's the description. I never knew this existed. Evolving from single-celled yellow organisms at the dawn of time.
What?
Minions live to serve, but find themselves working for a continual series of unsuccessful masters. From T-Rex, I assume not the band, but like actual Tyrannosaurus Rexes, to Napoleon. Without a master to grovel for, the Minions fall into a deep depression. But one Minion, Kevin, has a plan. Accompanied by his pals Stuart and Bob, Kevin sets forth to find a new evil boss for his brethren to follow. Their search leads them to the Scarlet Overkill, the world's first ever super villainess.
Wow,
that doesn't sound like a great movie.
I'm sure it's totally fun. I have not seen the Despicable Me movies, to be honest, but I know the Minions because everyone seems to dress up as them at Halloween. So I see that costume a lot, which is my knowledge. I did not know they're single-cell organisms either.
I did not know that either. They look far more complex than...
or they evolved from single-cell organisms.
They evolved from, yes, I guess that's true. We all did.
Yeah, that's kind of like, that's sort of a tautology.
Yeah.
Like, well, maybe.
It just offended so many creationists.
Dude, let me tell you one story that you'll appreciate very much, and this will offend a lot of people, I'm sure, but it's worth it. So, on Bloomsday, I went to this Irish bar in town, and I went inside, and I was there with Kyle Semmel, our translator from the Danish, and went inside to get some. We were sitting out; it was beautiful out, whatever. I went in to get some beer, and I was expecting to get like Guinness and Jameson and like Bloomsday-esque it out. And they had a special on some other IPA, and I made some joke. I was like, "Oh, you should have like $9 pitchers of Guinness instead of this, since it's Bloomsday." And the guy at the bar was like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And this woman was sitting there, and she, just like a bar patron, just like a normal middle-aged bar patron, and she's like, "What is Bloomsday?" And it's like, "Oh, it's based on this book by James Joyce. It's incredibly famous. It's probably Ireland's second most popular holiday, behind St. Patrick's Day." And she's like, "But like, it's based on a book?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's a pretty famous book, but it's a book." She's like, "But is it like a fiction book or is it like the Bible?" I was like, "Well, they're both kind of fiction, right?" And she's like, "They're not. The Bible is not fiction." And she like freaked out on me, so I had to like leave because I mordantly offended this woman by implying that the Bible is not 100% historical truth through and through compared to Ulysses.
Wow.
Yeah, it took a real big damper on my Bloomsday. Like, fuck. Just wanted to get a Guinness.
You can't go around telling people the Bible is a bunch of made-up bullshit.
I didn't say made-up bullshit. I just said it's kind of fiction, too. I mean, even if you believe in the Bible, like, in all person, I mean, like, it's not... I don't think I think there's a lot of people who could believe in the Bible or, like, respect the Bible and not think of it as, like, I don't know, like, historical... Or I don't know what the word is, like, nonfiction of that verbatim sense.
You mean that they appreciate that it's, fables based on reality, but that are fictionalized for the sake of making a point.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I was implying, but no. Oh, boy. Do not say that.
It's like, like there are Supreme Court justices who are literalists, right? And
yeah,
there are others who are more open to interpretation and that sort of thing. I think the same thing with, Christians in regards to the Bible, so...
Yeah, I just walked into the wrong one of them. I made up for it a lot by telling a lot of people about Finnegan's Wake and Ulysses and things that are considered inappropriate. So in those books, so it was fun. But anyways, I think that was when we actually recorded our last podcast. To be honest, I think it was that day,
June 16th.
Yeah, and then I went out right after we did that. But anyways, that's all I've got.
I think that's it for me too.
It was a nice long podcast.
Nice.
I'm gonna go investigate where we are in these rankings.
Yeah, good luck with that. It's really depressing. But the only way, the rankings might not actually be rankings. But if you go to the podcast app, that's where.
Okay.
Yeah, subcategories.
Got it. I'm gonna do that now. Okay. Well, I'll talk to you later, man.
All right. Have a good one.
Take care.
So if you subscribe and have the automatic download but never listen, that's okay. It's okay. We just want to get on the lists.